Hi everyone and welcome back to Modern Jubilees. In today's video I want to talk about Abraham's family as it appears in chapter 11 of the Book of Jubilees. What brought upon this video, what led to this video, is the extreme anti-Semitic sentiment that is put out there on the internet that says that Jews are not Semitic, Jews are not from Abraham, we're just these random people who just came about and came from somewhere else, and all this weird stuff. So without getting too far into that, of course, check out the video on Rashi to know about where the lighter-skinned Jews do generally come from and that story. But other than that, I want to get into this story of Abraham's family, my family, and we're going to do this by reading chapter 11 of Jubilees. Abraham and Corruption on the Earth is the title. It correlates with Genesis 11, 20 to 30, but of course, Jubilees includes more information, different information, and a different perspective, coming from the perspective of the angel that is with Moses on Mount Sinai. So let's read using this chart that I made to really help us understand what we're hearing. In the 35th Jubilee, in the third week, in its first year, Re'u means look, see. Re'u married Orah, daughter of Ur, son of Kesed. She gave birth to his son, and he named him Serug in the 7th year of this week, in this Jubilee. Noah's sons began to war with each other, take captive and kill each other, spill human blood on earth, eat blood, and build strong cities, walls, and towers. Individuals began to elevate themselves above the nation, founded the first kingdoms, and went to war, people against people, nation against nation, city against city. Everything got worse. They developed arms, taught their sons war, began to capture cities, and sold male and female slaves. This is taking place, by the way, after the story of Bavel. I skipped a few chapters to get to this important topic. And so here we see the beginning of slavery and of kingdoms being founded, in which the definition sort of a kingdom here is individuals began to elevate themselves above the nation, for good and for worse. But here it says everything got worse. Ur, son of Kesed, built the city of Ur-Kasdim and named it after his own name and the name of his father. And we know that Ur-Kasdim, or Ur of the Chaldees, Kesed was the father of Chaldees. Ur-Kasdim becomes the capital of Chaldea, which develops into the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and this is where Abraham comes from. This is the area between the Tigris and the Euphrates that we know of today in Iraq. They made molten images for themselves, and each worshipped their idol that they had formed for themselves. They began making sculpted images and unclean forms. Malevolent spirits aided and misled them to commit sin and uncleanness. The prince Mastema, who here we're going to introduce. The prince here is surely from the Hebrew word sar, which means a minister, a prince, a dignitary, or a commander. And mastema in Hebrew, listom, is to blockade, is to block, it's to obstruct. So he is essentially the minister of obstruction. And from here we get the English word Satan, that which obstructs us and keeps us from doing what is good and right and true. So the prince Mastema empowers all of this. He sent other spirits under his dominion to do every type of wickedness, sin, and transgression. This reminds me of all the bots and crazy people on the internet who seem to comment on so many things all over with this terrible stuff. So it reminds me of Mastema, these terrible people online who simply are basically trying to get us to veer off course. They are obstructing us from getting to goodness. They are confusing us with half-truths or lies. So that's what it reminds me of. So he's sending them to corrupt and destroy and spill blood on earth. This is why Serug is named Serug. Let's go back to the tree. So here we are. So far we've been talking about Re'u and Orah and Serug. I went back a little to give us the context that we're coming from Eber. Eber is where we get the word Ivri, a Hebrew, the children of Eber. Eber means the other side. Those who go on the other side, meaning monotheists versus the polytheists in those times, those who are willing to stand alone on the other side with the truth. Be'ever, le'ever, me'ever. It's the other side, and that's where we get, again, Ivri, Hebrew. Ivrit is Hebrew. Ivri is the Hebrew, which Abraham is called throughout the Bible. He is the first to be called a Hebrew, and then in slavery in Egypt, the children of Israel are referred to as the Hebrews, and until this day, referred to as the Hebrews sometimes. And we're in verse 6 now. This is why Serug is named Serug, because everyone turned to do all types of sin. And here we get Serug as in Genesis 11:20-23, meaning in Hebrew, serug means to crochet, lace, knit, or weave. So they're turning in every direction to do sin, to do evil. And Re'u, we learned earlier in Jubilees, Re'u, son of Peleg, is look. Re'u means look in the plural, and that's from the previous chapter, verse 18, where Peleg married Lomna, daughter of Sinar. She gave birth to his son. He named him Re'u because he said, look, humans have grown evil through the wicked plan of building themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. And that is the whole story of Bavel, the Tower of Babel, which we aren't going into in this video. So why is Serug named Serug? Everyone turns to do all type of sin. Verse 7, he grew up, Serug, and lived in Ur-Kasdim near his wife's mother's father. He worshipped idols. In the 36th Jubilee, in the 5th week, in its first year, he married Milcah, daughter of Kaber, who was his father's brother's daughter. And we're going to see a pattern here in Avraham's family that produces him, the children of Eber, because Eber, we know, was a scholar. Eber knew a lot of ancient wisdom. The wisdom that was passed down from Noah to Shem, he was sort of like the chosen priest, Shem, of the sons. And Shem and Eber are known to have founded a place of study where Abraham's descendants even will go and study in this place, which is in northern Israel on a mountaintop where I've spent a lot of time. And all the more so why it's so crazy for people to say, when they don't even know me or anything about me, that I surely don't descend from Shem and I'm surely from Japheth, when I know my entire ancestry back to the pages of the Bible. So it's rude and crazy. But that's what this video is dedicated to, is to these people who think that they can just tell me where I come from when I know literally exactly where I come from. And so here we are learning it together. Okay, so he worships idols. In the 36th Jubilee, in the 5th week, in its first year, he married Milcah, daughter of Kaber, who was his father's brother's daughter. And so there's this pattern of marrying cousins. And though it's not done much today in terms of first cousins, back then when there were less people in the world, it was surely done. First 3 or 4 generations from Adam, people were marrying their siblings, but then it stopped abruptly and did not continue. But what did happen is that people began marrying their cousins. Very normal, or cousin once removed, depending on when your sibling had their children. Your child could marry your sibling's child or your sibling's grandchild. And that was normal in order to hold together this ancient wisdom and the tradition of the ancient texts that have been passed down from the beginning of time, and certainly from the time of Abraham. But Abraham, as we'll see later in Jubilees, discovers ancient texts from way before him. Even Canaan, son of Arpachshad, after the flood, discovered ancient writings on stone from before him. And so ancient wisdom has existed and continues to exist until this day if we are willing to seek it out genuinely and sincerely and humbly. Okay, she gave birth to his son Nahor. So who's giving birth to Nahor? This Milcah. In the first year of this week, and he grew and lived in Ur-Kasdim. His father taught him the research of the Chaldees on how to predict and interpret the signs of heaven. And this is, of course, an allusion to astrology and astronomy. In the 37th Jubilee, in the 6th week, in the first year of it, he married Iska, daughter of Nestag of the Chaldees. She gave birth to Terach. In the 7th year of this week, Prince Mastema, if you recall, is this minister of obstruction, sent ravens and birds to devour the seed that had been planted in the land, to destroy it and rob the humans of their labor. Before they could plow in the seed, the ravens picked it up from the surface of the ground. For this reason, he named him Terach, because the ravens and birds robbed them and devoured their seed. Terach is related to have to toil and labor, to take great trouble and work. And that is referred to in Genesis 11:24-27, where we learn about Terach. The years began to be barren because of the birds. They devoured all the fruit from the trees. Only with great effort could they save a little of all the food of the earth in their days. In this 39th Jubilee, in the 2nd week, in the 1st year, Terach married Edna, daughter of Avraham, and daughter of his father's sister. This is not Avraham who we know, Abraham, but this is the maternal grandfather of the biblical Avraham, who he is then named after. And this is a tradition until this day among Jewish people. And this is a difference between Sephardi and Ashkenazi Jews, is that it's very common to name a child after your parent, right? If you have a child, to name it after your parent. In the Ashkenaz world, that would be only if the parent has already passed on. But in the Sephardi world, for example, the Syrian world, Syrian Jewish, of course, it doesn't matter if the person is passed or alive. Even if the parent is alive, the child will be named after the parent. And so this is a very common tradition among Jews and among certain Israelites. And one of the signs when we discover Israelites from various tribes around the world, there are so many traditions to measure and see what traditions they have, and are they Israelite traditions? This would be an example of an Israelite tradition. In the 7th year of this week, she gave birth to his son. He named him Avraham, the name of his mother's father, as he had died before his daughter had conceived. And so this is the Ashkenaz tradition that it's only once they pass that this naming is passed on, but that's just a matter of tradition, not, of course, law. And here we are introduced to Avraham, father of monotheism, father of the 3 great religions of the world, a man who loved peace, a man who believed in hospitality and in interfaith work, you might say, as his tent was open to discuss. He had many, many converts and followers and was an extraordinary man. So that is how we get Avraham. That is where Avraham comes from. This is the story of the family of Avraham and how he comes to be. Next up begins to talk about little Avraham, and it's so great. So if you're wondering, by the way, why is he called Avraham and later Avraham, we find that in the Bible, the story where God gives him this extra hey in his name, takes from his wife Sarai the yud of the end of her name, which is the number 10, and splits it into 2 heys, which are each 5. So Sarah gets a hey, 5, and Avraham gets a hey, 5. So he changes from Avram to Avraham. She changes from Sarai to Sarah. And that is the beginning of Abraham's family tree. This is how the children of Abraham, and especially the children of Israel, who have been very careful to marry within the faith, which has been very important both in Jubilees and in the Bible, that the children of Israel, which of course includes the Jewish people, do descend from Eber, who is a descendant of Shem. And not only that, but Shem and Eber were classically a team that studied and passed on wisdom of the ancients to the new world that was beginning to develop as people began to have more children and multiply upon the earth. So thank you for listening to this discussion about Abraham's family, my family, the family of the Jewish people, the family of Israel, and the family of all those who ally with Israel and with God, and with the children of Abraham, and with the Bible. We are a family. We are a good people who should look out for one another, and people who love peace. Abraham loved peace, and his children love peace. So thank you for listening. This is Modern Jubilees, and we will see you next time.